What is Nostos? Nostos is a really important theme in the Odyssey. It means the desire to return to one's homeland, and we get the word nostalgia, the pain of the need to return to one's homeland, or homesickness. Odysseus has been away for 20 years from his home in Ithaca, but this pain has been more acute in the last 10 years, as that's how long it's been since he left Troy to try and get back home. Odysseus is returning home from the Trojan War, a war to which he actively tried to avoid going, and that should have taken him about 3 weeks. Odysseus spends a lot of the Odyssey pining for home and having his chances at resolving his Nostos threatened constantly. Now, little does he know, but at home, the suitors, the men who wish to marry his wife, are plotting to also kill his son. Marrying his wife is all right. He himself told his wife Penelope to marry again if he didn't come home. But the fact is, they have overstayed their welcome and they're plotting to commit murder of his own son. That means they have broken Xenia. This is a dire problem. When he finally gets to leave Calypso's island, he gets to the Phaeacians, and the first one he meets is the Princess Nausicaa. He is completely naked and basically covering himself with a bush, and yet she still manages, after giving him Xenia, cleaning him up a bit, to find him attractive, and she drops a lot of hints to the fact that maybe they should get married. That would be certainly a bit of a problem, him already being married, although there's not much of a problem when it comes to Calypso and Circe and all the rest. But still, marrying her would be a bit of a delay. Once Odysseus is being given Xenia by the Phaeacians, he tells them the story of how he lost the rest of the last 10 years. The Lotus Eaters are one such delay. When his men meet the Lotus Eaters, they are given some of the lotus fruit to taste, and now all they wanted was to stay where they were with the Lotus Eaters, to browse on the lotus, and to forget all thoughts of return. That's from the E.V. Ryu translation. Clearly, this is a hindrance if the men no longer have Nostos, and Odysseus is forced to pull them away for their own good. Next they meet Polyphemus, a cyclops, who not only gives them really bad Xenia by, instead of feeding them, eating his crew, he almost prevents Odysseus from leaving by locking them inside the cave. Again, Odysseus is forced to use his cleverness to get out of Polyphemus's cave. I'm not going to give you spoilers right now, you can read it for yourself. However, when he finds out who Odysseus really is, he curses him, so that either he won't get home at all, but this is fated, or that, at the very least, he will return home late, in a wretched state, needing help and alone with problems at home. And of course that's going to put off Odysseus getting Nostos at all. Later, Odysseus meets the LAESTRYGONIANS, or at least he sends some men to meet them, who get eaten, and then they attack the rest of Odysseus' ships, and only his ship manages to escape. Thus the LAESTRYGONIANS deprive an awful lot of Odysseus' men of Nostos. They meet Circe, the witch goddess, who, with her magic drugs, has bewitched men and turned them into mountain wolves and lions. She then turns several of Odysseus' men into pigs, again potentially stopping them from having Nostos. Then Odysseus manages, with Hermes' help, to defeat her. And then she decides to give them Xenia for a whole year. So even though they're in the lap of luxury, they're still not exactly going home. Finally, when Odysseus realises his men are getting a little bit itchy-footed, Circe tells him he can't go home yet. He must go to where the underworld is and meet Tiresias, the blind and also dead seer. Finally, when they get going again, they meet several more potential threats to getting home. The Sirens, who sing to Odysseus and try and get him to land on the rocks where they will potentially eat him. There's an awful lot of bones around. Then Scylla and Charybdis, one a terrifying whirlpool, the other a several-headed monster that snatches up several of Odysseus' crew. But again, they make it through. Just not all of them. Calypso, the beautiful-haired nymph on whose island Odysseus finally washes up alone. She only wants to marry him and make him live forever, and that's where he is for 7 years, and has been when we first meet him in the text. However, one of the other major dangers to Odysseus' own Nostos is his own crew. When they fight the Cacones after leaving Troy and sack their town, Odysseus wants to leave straight away, but they don't. They want to have a bit of a party. The next day, reinforcements come, and they almost don't survive. When Aeolus gives a bag of winds to Odysseus so that only the west wind is left, enabling him to almost get home, his men, despite the fact that Odysseus has always shared stuff with them, decide that this bag is full of silver and gold, and he hasn't shared it, and they want it. Thus they open the bag, a terrible storm ensues, and they end up right back at Aeolus' door. Later in Book 12, when they're stuck on the island of Thrinaciae, belonging to the sun god Hyperion, and they're not allowed to eat the sun god's cattle, well, guess who is just plain hungry? And one of the worst of them is Eurylochus, which possibly means wide ambush. He's certainly ambushing Odysseus all the time, talking against him and trying to rile the others up into mutiny. However, he's not entirely wrong. Odysseus is a bit problematic himself. When they finally escaped Polyphemus the Cyclops, he just has to shout back at him several times, almost getting everyone killed in the process. And he just has to tell the Cyclops that it was him who blinded him so he can get all the kudos, which results in him being cursed by Polyphemus. And when given a choice of different ways of getting home, he chooses not to go the way that Jason went, the Wandering Rocks, because Jason's already done it. So instead, he goes past Scylla and Charybdis, knowing that this is going to take the lives of several of his men. And aside from that, there are several other moments where he willingly puts others' lives at risk, as well as his own. Thus the theme of Nostos drives Odysseus, and thus it drives the first half of the Odyssey.